It's not that big beer is bad. It's that big beer is big beer, and this is what they do. And and he made the comparison to the Borg, and it's you don't get angry at the Borg because the Borg is the Borg. You just resist the Borg.
Hey, pass me a beer.
Look, at least promise me you won't drink. Alcohol always leads to trouble.
Hey, who wants to play Drink the Beer?
Right here.
You win.
All right, what do I win?
Another beer.
Just have a cup of coffee.
There it is.
Coffee?
Beer.
I'd kill for a beer.
Cheap beer and a sympathetic ear. Step right up.
But what's up, everybody? Thank you for joining us another Beardy Hops episode for your ear holes. I, of course, am your lovely host, Adam. And just across the cheddar curtain, we have Chad. What's up, bitch tits?
Hey, what's up, boys? How you doing tonight?
Oh, man, I forgot the new sound effects, too.
Uh-oh.
My name is Chad.
There we go. Jeez.
I love that one. Best one.
And, of course, sitting right across from me.
It's Jake from State Farm.
What's up, Jake?
Obviously. I didn't know it was Cubs hat night. Somebody sent me the memo.
Well, the Bears are over, so now it's switch over to the Cubs hats. And Chad actually just ordered a new Cubs hat.
Ooh.
I did, because this hat, well, I can't show because that, well, it's all salty, sweated.
Okay.
So
Salty.
this is going to be my new shop garage hat, so I had to order a new Cubs hat.
That's your Cubs sequence hat?
Yeah, because my balls was hot.
No, it's all salty.
My balls was hot.
So yeah, everybody, thank you for joining us. We have a very special episode for you. It's our first ever interview of a person, of a human, and so we'll get to that in a second. But first, of course, as we always do, we have to go over to Jake.
It's Jake from State Farm.
He's got to do our rules of engagement, Jake.
Sounds hideous. All right, boys and girls. Well, tonight
She
we
sounds
got
she's a guy,
Scarlet
so-
Fire from Tighthead Brewery, and that is in Mundelein.
You can hold it up for the camera, but nobody can see except
Oh,
Chad,
yeah, right.
so.
What am I? I'm just holding it up for nothing. Well, they're not going to be able to watch my sniff.
Nope.
So, yeah, we'll pop this open. They got some art going on the can. We'll probably
They
throw a
got some
shout
cool
out to
artwork.
that. I do like their artwork. And then take a nice little sniff and see what we got going on here. And this is, remind me, is this a...
It's a red ale.
A red ale. Ooh, I like red ales.
Yeah.
Fantastic. Yeah, we'll get some initial impressions, go around the horn here, see what we're tasting, see what we're smelling, get an initial rating there. And then, we'll hit some beer stuff, come back at the midpoint. I mean, we do have a 16, this is a pint, right?
Pint, yep.
Oh, yeah, I'm going to crush this. We'll come
Oh,
back
yeah,
around 8 ounces, 9 ounces there, and get a halfway point, and then we'll finish it off with the final rating on Untapped. And if you're not following us on Untapped, then, nobody's perfect.
And what is wrong with you?
Nicely done.
A lot.
Is Trump turning our frogs gay?
So,
No, he's giving them whoppers.
yeah, right. Giving them whoppers. So yeah, we do have a beer from Tighthead Brewing out of Mundelein, Illinois. Kind of a local brewery for us. We've been to several times. Like Jake said, Scarlet Fire. It is a red ale, an Irish style red ale named for the improvisational transition of Grateful Dead song Scarlet, whatever. It's really got some really cool artwork. It is a 5.6 ABV, 30 IBU. Yes, Jake, we know they don't matter. And
That's not what I said.
it doesn't.
It's not that they don't matter.
It doesn't matter.
I just think there's a
look. Season 2, you can't take it back. It's already in the
on
books.
what people are supposed to assume when they see it. It's
Whatever.
mismarketed.
All right, let's crack it open, boys. Let's go.
I love Tighthead's logo, the football on fire.
It's not a football.
And what is it? Is it
Rugby.
a rugby ball?
Yeah, Tighthead is a rugby term.
Okay. So it's
The
a rugby.
the founder owner of Tighthead, he was very big into rugby in his high school, college days, and so he kind of kept that theme once he did the brewery.
Nice. Well, I've been there a couple times, and I just learned something new. I didn't know that before. Yeah. The artwork is awesome. Hot chick with the hop dress.
We'll have to look up who does their artwork, because all their artwork is of the same kind of style, I guess is the right word. So
yeah, Chili Water is probably one of my favorite cans ever.
I had that beer the other day on draft, and I didn't remember how sweet it was, but it's really good. So
I almost bought it again today.
yeah, it smells like a red ale for sure.
Yeah, their artwork reminds me of what I would call like a what do you call it? Like a graphic novel type of artwork, or what my wife would say, "Why are you reading a comic?" But really high quality.
You know what? You're like my wife when you get in space. You just get lost.
Perfect.
So, of course, being a red ale, it is red. Head that kind of dissipates nice and quickly since we got to be more descriptive since we're not putting this on YouTube today. Smells like a red ale. Like, I mean, there's really nothing, when you smell it, that's what a red ale smells like to me. Kind of malty, not boozy.
Yeah, not boozy.
No.
It smells 5 point, yeah, as you said, 5.6 ABV. I mean, there is, what am I getting there? I mean, is it grapefruit? I'm getting something, a little tartness when I smell it. Am I crazy?
I don't know. You could be. It's probably your nose.
Almost like I don't know. I'm getting like a tart berry grapefruit on the front end.
That's a weird one. Well,
I get more of a sweet smell.
I'll get more of a, hey, I'm thirsty. Let's drink this smell. So I'm going to.
There's not a tart taste at
I wonder what their hops are because what we used Fuggle in our red ale. This doesn't smell like that though.
Would you call me?
I don't know. Why would you call me? They don't list.
The taste has a toastiness.
Toastiness and grain, the kind of the grainy part of it.
Yeah, it is very grainy.
Yeah.
I like that.
Apparently, I've checked this in twice, but I don't remember.
You had it. We were at the.
We had everything that night.
I didn't have it last time we went because I had it before, so I was only trying to check in new stuff. But
the best part of Tighthead's beer was amazing that night. But remember, there was also somebody working there that pulled out like a private
reserve collection
barrel age or something they had been doing on their own, and I mean, I was 3 sheets, in by.
Yeah, that was
point.
Tony, right here. He's on their website.
Is he?
Yeah, that's the guy, Tony. We
need to look that guy up.
Need to go
made more.
We need to go back because I have seen that they have started barrel aging. I have to look more if anything's been released on it yet, but I know they were starting a barrel program.
Oh shit!
So they are going to be doing that. So.
Yeah, I try. We just had a taster of this though. This is the first time I've had a full pint and opened a can. So it'd be interesting to see where this goes.
Yeah, definitely. I'm trying to look up the beer style, and it took me forever to find it here. So they're considering this an Irish style red ale. So typically it's going to be Kent Goldings, hops, malt is going to be pale crystal and roasted barley, which I think the roasted barley is mainly what I'm tasting there.
Very roasty toasty.
Yeah, definitely. So, so let's go around the horn. We'll go ahead with Chadwick. What are you saying?
One beer.
Yeah, roasted. Yeah, it's a roasty, grainy. They say that there's in the description that you get a sweetness from the caramel malt. I can't taste any caramel, but I do get a little bit of a sweetness. It's a cloudy beer. I noticed at the bottom as the bottom of the can came out, it got cloudier and cloudier. So I'm actually kind of wondering if my next taste is going to be a little bit different. But I will say this is a solid beer. I'm going to go in at a 3.5 on my initial.
Nice,
solid, good beer.
Yeah, 3.5. Jake.
2 beers.
Well, it has a very heavy amber. Am I almost seeing some grain floating in there?
You got some
in the bottom, yeah.
I don't see any, but
look at that. Tell me if I'm. What's it like? Tell me if I'm crazy. I mean, it's almost at the. I might. You see, like some floatage action. Yeah. I mean, it's probably just a little grain action. I'm not getting anything crazy.
Oh yeah, you're right.
Nothing that's impacting flavor or anything.
Probably it makes the flavor better.
Yeah, I think it's almost funny. Like in the sort of the depths of my glass here, there's parts where it's so sort of ambery and thick that it's almost a brown.
Thick.
Thick
and juicy.
Thick brown. Very roasty toasty. A little bit more roasty toasty than the red ales I typically gravitate towards. I'll probably come in maybe a 3.25. I mean, there's a lot of good flavor here. I do agree with you, Chad. I'm not getting any. There is a sweetness, but I'm not getting any caramel.
Thank you for saying it correctly.
So,
It's
but
great.
yeah,
It's great that you're aligned with the Packers fan when you say the word caramel.
Caramel.
it's great that you would just shut up. I don't know. I think it's a good beer. I think this is like the perfect, for me personally, the perfect beer of like, I'm going to do a flight or something of that nature. Like 8 ounces would be, perfect.
Hey, now where are you getting an 8-ounce flight at?
Well, I don't know. I guess I got the little buddy in my head from earlier. My buddy.
I'm just giving you
Adam,
buddy and me.
What are you?
3 beers.
Yeah. So
Where are you at over there, bud?
this actually, I think, would be a good one, like to have in the fridge. It's
Regularly?
It's
Yeah.
not a high ABV. It's kind of a good go. It's refreshing. It's not. I mean, it's not. Oh, it's not amazingly refreshing.
It's not
but
like crisp,
no,
though, right?
Not like that. Not like.
Not like
Yeah, not like I'm really thirsty. I need a red ale. No, it's not quite like that.
Not refreshing like the Brut IPA.
The root. Yeah,
Brut IPA. I don't know.
it's a U. It's not an E. Brett is.
I think Chad just tries to say things
Yeah,
differently
exactly.
to be different.
Hey, they're order a.
Did you notice this is a 2018 Great American Beer Festival Gold winner?
Yeah, the thing, man, he has won several. Tastes good.
Can I ask a stupid question?
Wow, I would expect
Most
nothing
of
less
them
from
are.
you. Yeah.
So,
My balls was hot.
is there any, other than just the brewmaster saying this is ready to drink, is there any time period that I should look to consume red ale that I purchase?
No, senor.
Because we're like,
No, senor. No, senor. No, senor.
I think we planned this. We did it. He's just being a dick. Because IPAs, I hear I hear in general sooner the better, but 60 days ideally, 90 days max. Like, is there anything?
I don't know what it would be for red ale.
Can I
Actually,
throw this in the fridge and just drink it when I get to it?
yeah, I don't know what the age on how to age. I don't know what it'd be for red ale. I really don't.
Well,
I have to look
I'll
that
put
up.
it. I could put it this way. I've never heard that you can't, not necessarily age. a
I
red
haven't
ale,
either.
but I've never heard.
Not
you
even
gotta
age it, but just I don't have to worry about a
Right,
canning
that's
date,
what-
do I?
Yeah, I'm not. Nobody's going to age a red ale, but I don't think I've never heard anybody say, well, that red ale's 6 months old. Probably should throw that out.
Right. Yeah, I was just curious because I don't know.
So I just did a really quick Google search on the question, and it says for your standard ales, it says, and again,
Chad calls it alls.
yeah, alls.
Olive.
Alls. 6 months to 2 years after the best before date, if kept in the fridge. 6 to 9 months if kept in a cupboard. I don't know if I buy that 2 years.
Interesting.
I'd have to look a little bit. Well, that was just a really quick Google search, and the first thing that came up, so I don't really know. But so Chad, you were 3.5. Jake, you were 3.25.
Yeah, well,
Right.
I'm hanging out at 3.2 right now. 3.25.
Yeah, I think I'm at 3.5. I do like this one. I like that the finish isn't sweet. I've started. I don't know why, but lately I've started noticing that more about some beers that are just the finish for whatever reason is like sweet. Like the IPA over there is we were just talking about. What was that one? Of Tightheads, we were just talking about.
Oh, chili water.
Yeah, chili water. I had it for the first time on tap at a bar, and I remember going, "This is really, really sweet on the back end." Man, I never realized it. It was good, but anyway, 3.5,
Like a sweet back end.
Yeah, sweet back ends are nice, very nice. Now, Tighthead is a brewery that we have been to. I think Jake and I more than once. Chad once, right?
Wait, yes.
Yeah.
I've drank it several times, but I've been to the brewery just one time.
Their brewer or their owner, and if I go back a page, I can get to the right page where it tells me his name because I can't remember his name. Bruce Durr. He was, as most of these guys are, homebrewers, and then he started getting into the judging. So he became a certified brew judge, and then he decided just to open his own. I don't know if that was because I've tasted plenty that were shit and I need to make my own now, or if his stuff was good enough. But as you said, I mean, this one won an award at Great American Beer Fest, right? Yeah, 2018 gold for Irish style red ale. So I think he knows what he's doing. So he's another one we should get on. I'll reach out to them tomorrow. So yeah, good one so far.
I like that spot too. You know, they had added on to it. It's very family friendly. You know, it's very open.
You remember we were supposed to go there for my 40th birthday party. Remember that?
Yes, I do.
And then we had a bad snowstorm and had
awful snowstorm.
Call it audible. Oh man, I really wish we would have done. We should just find whatever reason we want. We should find whatever reason we want. Throw a party there just for the fuck of it because I want to do that.
Yeah, it's a great place and it's very great staff. Every time
we should take a tour there. Actually, they have tours. I mean, it's right down the road. It's not far, so that's what we should do.
I think it epitomizes though everything you kind of want out of a local brewery, right? Like it feels comfortable. It feels friendly.
It's right at the train stop.
Yeah, it's easy. You know, it's a good spot.
Yeah.
You know, walking distance around other stuff if possible. I mean, that's not always possible, but you know, it feels kind of part of the area.
And the staff is always awesome there. I mean, we had the one. It was later in the night, and the one guy came over to us and said, "Hey, you want to try this?" And it was a homebrew barrel aged beer that was. It was really good. And we're just
all of us were like, "Can we buy this right now?
Why aren't you
like,
selling this shit, dude? Come on." So maybe
it's fun to buy beer though from people, and this is always why I have so much fun at good beer stores. I know that's kind of a relative term, and Chad probably hates it, but you know, just it's ambiguous. But I'll just throw out there instead of trying to define it. But it's always fun when you meet people just like talking about beer.
That was today. I went to Beer Bazaar, and I didn't know they opened at noon on Wednesdays. So I get there, it's like 5 to noon. So I waited, and he opens up. I walk in. I'm the only one there, except me and a delivery dude. And I asked him, like, you know, I haven't been in a while. What's new? Like, what do you liking? And he walked me all over that store. You know, like, this one's really good. I've had this one. This, you know, it was just cool. Then I was asking him, you know, how Bourbon County went. Asked me if he got any Revolution. What was funny is I did tell him that I picked up Revolution at Libertyville craft beer store, and I told him I got vanilla, and that he only had like 4 packs, and he's like, really?
Where are you keeping them, by the way? Anyways, go ahead.
None of your business. He gave me this look. And I'm like, yeah, it was just like last week or whatever. And he goes, huh? Well, my distributor said that none of them were making them up this far. Uh-oh, some distributors got in trouble. So,
right. Oh,
yeah. So, the other thing Tighthead does they do poses and pints, and that's where they do the yoga in the brewery.
Oh
yeah.
So they drink beer and do yoga in the beer house. I mean, I'll go and spectate.
We always have a good number of beers on tap too, and it's always fun to try to drink them all in one night.
Yeah, and I think they have some new stuff. I haven't checked them out lately.
Well, if I don't go to Illinois Saturday, let's go there.
I mean, you're going to be in Illinois because you're going to be at my house.
Oh, yeah. If I don't go to Bloomington, Illinois.
Illinois.
Yeah, so they do have a barrel-aged oatmeal stout right now in the barrels. It's not on tap yet.
Yeah, I feel like we did talk to them about that a little bit in our, you know.
On their website, if you go to the tap room section on their website down at the bottom, they say in barrels, not on tap. And that, what is this one called? BA Oats, I think is what it's called.
You think a lot of breweries of that sort of relative size, where they're bigger than say a Nano, but they're not, a multi-state regional. Do you think they feel pressure to enter barrel age, not necessarily as not necessarily to acquire some sort of profit margin, but just to gain sort of notoriety and set themselves apart and start to build up some excitement around events and hopefully really it pushes the other beers that they're making that they can produce quicker, faster, at a lower cost, and that they probably have, hopefully at least in more, larger production, more profit on. Do you think because Tighthead seems to be kind of right in that size where, like, do we need to start thinking about this?
Yeah, I don't know. I think part of it kind of like us, like when we brewed the Flame Out Stout. We think of it as, man, this would be fun to put in a barrel and see what happens, right? So I'm pretty sure there's some of that for these guys too.
I'm sure the home brewing,
right?
These guys are all beer,
They're all home brewers. They want to do it.
Yeah, I get that.
But also,
like
you gotta
only
think
child, does it make sense for them to have a barrel age program? Probably not.
But they do. I mean, they have all those barrels there. That's how they're doing a lot of their
sours.
Mm-hmm. But also though, you got to think people are walking in asking the question because barrel aged beers are hot right now.
Everybody wants to know what barrel aged beer do you have?
Right, and so if this is my favorite local, craft brewery, well, when are you guys gonna do a barrel age, man? I want to try it from you guys. You guys are my favorite, So
what do you know about this barrel aged Kaya Dog?
I don't.
Old Kaya Dog. You see this?
No.
Barrel aged barley wine
on their site
using Woodford Reserve bourbon barrels.
Where you help me out here? Where you
Seasonal
find
beers?
this? Huh?
You go to their beers page.
Okay.
Scroll down to seasonal beers. Middle column on the bottom.
Oh shit!
Woodford Reserve bourbon barrels, barley wine.
Yeah.
I mean, does that mean it's available?
I don't know. Seasonal doesn't say when.
Old Kaya Dog.
Always down here.
November, but is that November of 18 or is that in this next year? I gotta know.
Well, this November to February.
Yeah.
So maybe if we go in there.
But see, here's my issue. Okay.
Oh boy, Jake's got issues.
You know where I land on the IBUs. So first of all, it says 113 IBUs. So somebody that doesn't know what the hell a barley wine is going to look at that and
crazy.
be like, "Oh my god, that's going to be so bitter." I mean, it does say hints of light fruit, but I'm guessing even if it has some tartness on the front end, it's not bitter. But my other issue here is, like, I'm kind of a drunk, right? So, I don't mind paying when it gets me feeling good. Tighthead, give me something that's 10% plus ABV.
It is low for a barrel age. It's the same ABV as their regular Old Kaya Dog.
Yeah. And I guess, though, Adam, correct me if I'm wrong, but did you not point me to an article recently that said the popularity of high ABV, barrel age, whatever is diminishing?
Yeah. So the trends that they're seeing right now is, the high ABVs are not as popular. So people are wanting to go have because people are wanting to try beers, right? So they're not wanting to get a single beer and get fucked up. They're wanting to try 4 or 5 different beers in a night because they haven't had them before.
Why can't you do both?
do 4 pints of 10 ABV beer. Yeah, fucked.
I mean, that sounds like a fun night to me.
Well, I mean, usually when you go to, Founders that I was at a couple months ago, or even when I went to O'Toole's in Libertyville because they had BCS. Usually, when they give you those pours of it's usually like it's not a 12 ounce or a 16 ounce pour.
Yeah,
it's like 8 or 10 or something like that.
I gotta think that 9.7 is wrong though.
Especially in the barrel aged one. And
yeah,
the
because
IBUs
if you're
are
old,
exactly the same too.
Yeah, your regular, they have the exact same IBU, exact same SRM for the barrel age. I think that's just kind of lazy.
Well,
maybe nothing's getting absorbed from the barrels. Like, I don't understand. It's
the SRM should definitely be a higher number and be darker.
Okay, but if you look at their calendar, the barrel aged, just regular Old Kaya Dog is on the calendar. Barrel aged is not. So maybe that's not available yet.
Oh, you're right. I took the
maybe they don't know yet because this is going to be the first.
Maybe they're just they know that's the base, but if it's not out of the barrels yet.
Apparently, this beer is good because I'm easily halfway, boys. Are we?
I look over and you're just like,
It says 8 ounces. I've passed that by about an inch. Story of my life. So I don't know where you guys are at.
I am just about halfway.
I'm gonna try to pump the brakes here.
Chad, you halfway?
Probably past halfway because it's a pint and I'm halfway through this non-pint glass.
Well, then let's go ahead and let's do the halfway now, and then we can talk about our very special guest.
Our halftime show.
Yeah, we'll do a special guest after this. So, we started with Chad, right? So, Chad, what is your
One beer.
What are you at the halfway point of this?
Yeah.
Biatch.
You know, I think in drinking this beer, the smell of it really, really helps. Because I really like the smell. I actually kind of like the smell better than the taste, but that aids in the taste. So,
you were a 3.5 at the start.
I was at a 3.5. I don't think I can go higher than 3.5, so I'm just going to stay at 3.5 at the halfway point.
Jake,
2 beers.
I thought I was gonna go lower because
he likes to go down.
I'm not huge on lots of roasty toasty. At least in the context of it's not part of some larger complexity. So I thought I was gonna go down to a 3, but then I looked down and the beer was just disappearing.
I won't talk nice to you.
I would suggest that this is a beer you drink cold. I don't think it's one you want to necessarily let hang around.
I agree.
But there is a nice residual sort of taste left on my palate that I'm enjoying.
Just gotta do number 2.
You know, I can sort of feel in the back of my jowls, and I'm enjoying it. So I think I'm going to just keep it right at a 3.25.
All that just to say.
I was going to say.
I'm going to stay.
Holy shit.
Well, it was going to go to a 3, but it kind of pulled itself back up to a 3.25. Shut up! It refused to go down. Once again.
I love it when it pulls itself back up.
Oh, man. That's crazy.
Chad, you'd love it. You'd love it.
All right. I'm not going to go into all that bullshit. I'm going to go to 3.75. I think for me, more flavors come out now that it's a little bit warmer, and I'm drinking half of it. So,
is anybody getting caramel?
I actually the last sip, I thought I tasted a little bit of caramel. I didn't taste caramel. I tasted caramel.
Thought I did, but I'm not sure.
Look at how the word is spelled. If you smell it when you drink it, that's where I feel like the caramel.
Shut up.
No, it's if you.
I think the aroma.
No, senor. No, senor. No, senor. No, senor.
No. Senor, come on.
Shut up.
I will not. This is my show as much as it is your show.
I won't talk nice to you and talk about fornicating with you.
Although I don't have control of the soundboard.
Yep, exactly. Yep. All right, so go ahead.
I do think that the aroma really helps with that sweetness and the caramel flavor. I do feel like the more I get into this, that aroma is helping the score. There's my
All right. So at the beginning, we said this was a special show because we had a chance to interview somebody for the first time. We've never done an interview on the show before. We always have wanted to. We've talked about it. We finally pulled the trigger and did it. And
was it worth it?
Yeah, it was freaking awesome. So Josh Noel, who is a writer for the Chicago Tribune, he is pretty much a beer writer now, he says. It's pretty much the majority of what he writes about. He did write a book about the ABInBev purchase of Goose Island Brewery in Chicago called the Barrel Aged Stouts and Selling Out. And we had a chance to talk to him today and interview him. Everybody should check him out all over the web. If you're definitely into craft beer, which I'm assuming that's why you're listening to this show in the first place, you definitely want to follow him on Twitter. Hop Notes is where you can find him. He tweets about everything beer related, from Goose Island InBev stuff to other local Chicago breweries. He was actually the one I went and looked. He was part of that article I found that led us to Revolution's barrel age. Remember that article in the Tribune where they tried Goose Island against Death Star, right? That's how the first time I was like, Death Star, what the fuck is this? And then they picked Death Star over Goose.
Mm-hmm. I remember that.
And that's what led us on the hunt to get Death Star.
Which turned out to be our 2018 beer of the year.
Yeah. So he was involved in that. So you can definitely check him out. Also at his website, joshnoel.net. Even if you don't like beer, you're going to love this book.
He's a fantastic writer.
It's a fantastic. I mean, the way he told the story.
To read in with it, like Chicago or the history of how things happen, business.
Yeah.
I mean, it's a microcosm. Is that the right word of what's probably going on in a lot of industries? The way that there's so much mergers and acquisitions, and also probably a lot of like, I don't really know who makes this anymore, but I'm going to keep buying it.
Right. Yeah. So we'll go ahead and play the interview now, and then we'll come back here in a minute with our thoughts on it.
So our inquiring minds want to know what's your beer of choice.
Oh yeah, that is a good. Well, the beer of choice, of course, is forever changing.
Yes.
Tonight it is a beer called Lil Buddy, which I just wrote about yesterday from Hopewell Brewing here in Chicago. It put this Helles lager in 8-ounce cans, the first 8-ounce cans in Chicago.
8 ounce.
Yeah, I saw your tweet when you put that out. Are they just trying to differentiate themselves, or is there a particular reason they did this? Is this just kind of a marketing thing?
It's marketing, definitely, crossed with what they believe is practicality, that there is a desire for the 8-ounce beer, and in this case, an 8-ounce, 4.7% Helles lager, which I just went for one. I mean, that's what I want right now. It's just 8 ounces. I think 8 ounces is a great serving size personally. And people tend to think of it, it's like, okay, yeah, we'll put our bourbon barrel aged stuff in that, which of course, yes, that makes sense too. 8 ounces is pretty damn practical for a single serving. But yeah, like 8 ounces of Helles, I think makes a lot of sense too. If you just want sort of the one of the founders called it a snack. It's like a beer snack, you know.
It's clever. I
want 16 ounces, and I'll go open another one.
Out of curiosity, what sort of was it, like a 4-pack, a 6-pack? How do they package that when it's 8 ounces?
4-pack.
4-pack.
Okay. 4-pack of 8-ounce cans. You should. I would encourage you to Google the story because the picture is really sort of tells the entire story.
Yeah, I just pulled it up. Yeah, it's a tiny little can. I did see you tweet that. I just didn't actually read it yet, so. That's cool. 8-ounce cans. That'd be perfect. As many beers as we drink, like not having to drink a whole can of it to an 8-ouncer. I know, Jake. You'd be upset. You
could be part of my New Year's resolution. You know, I'm getting in shape. I'm only drinking 8 ounces at a time now.
Whatever. You're drinking Miller Latte now. So, I think I saw your tweet early on about the book, and we had. I don't know if that was around the time when we were trying to get Bourbon County last year or whatever it was. And I told the guys, I was like, when this comes out, we got to get this book. And so we all got it. And then we started reading. I'm like, okay, we got to get this guy and talk to him. Because even if you're not into beer, I think it's hella interesting. You know, it's an interesting book. Even if you're not into the whole Chicago beer scene or beer in general.
Yeah, there's been a lot of talk about the book being of interest to beer drinkers and beer drinkers' wives. Right? I mean, or
wives?
Or a buddy that, huh?
You said wives?
Wives, yeah.
Oh, okay.
Like, oh, what are you reading? It's a book on beer, but it's interesting how the story unfolds. It's, you might be interested in reading it. And they pick it up and start reading it, and all of a sudden, other people that are not necessarily beer drinkers are reading it.
Yeah, that's been some of my favorite feedback is the people who are like, I don't really care that much about beer or the beer industry, or at least I didn't think I did.
Right.
But yeah, they find the story interesting, and it's beer is a really fascinating industry. I mean, the beer is obviously fun to drink, but I think part of the reason people sort of obsess about it and get so pissy about it is that it is just a fascinating place where lots of interesting things happen. You know, it's probably way more interesting than the dishwasher industry, you know,
Right.
objectively speaking.
And I think there's a lot of parallels to what a lot of people are seeing happening with corporations and mergers and buyouts in all kinds of industries. You know, I don't think it's specific to just the beer industry. I was listening to somebody else that interviewed you, Josh, and they had mentioned, or you had recommended, you know, you don't have to buy it on Amazon. You could go to your local bookstore and pick this up and ask for it and get them to order it. And the person that was interviewing you was like, well, just like, you know, craft beer versus big beer or whatever that was. But I had a friend that moved to Portland last year, and he lived in Chicago for a long time, and I just saw him over Christmas, and I gave him my copy of the book, and he likes.
He took my copy of the book, but.
And then I took Adam's copy, and all I was going to say is
Everyone wins but Adam. Okay.
Yeah, my buddy likes beer, but part of the reason he's excited is just because he misses Chicago, and he liked reading something that had to do with Chicago history.
Well, I have the book in Audible too, so I listened to it, so it was good. But how did this come up? How did you decide to write a book about Goose ABInBev? I mean, how did you get into this?
Well, it really goes back to just my work at the Chicago Tribune, and
by the way, how long have you been there?
I've been at the Tribune for it'll be 14 years this spring, which is
wow.
Crazy because it's, I mean, I don't know. It's like people worked somewhere 14 years. The people who did that were old, you know.
Right. That's unheard of these days.
The guy who worked there 14 years.
Yeah.
But yeah, I've been there 14 years. I was a news writer for 3 years, and then I was the travel writer for a couple years, and then I became travel and beer writer. Basically, my first beer article was written as sort of a side gig from my travel writing career. And that was 10 years ago, the first article. In fact, I should look the date up, but it was 2009, just as the beer industry was sort of, or, you know, this incarnation of the beer industry was getting going. And yeah, are any of you guys in Chicago?
Yeah, Jake and I were neighbors. Jake lives across the street from me. So we're at my house. We're up in Lake Villa.
Okay. So you know, then you know what's up.
Yeah, Chad's up in Wisconsin, west of Milwaukee, but I mean he's been around the Chicago.
Go Bears!
Yeah, exactly. He is the Packers
fan. And I'm still doing the Metro every day. I work down in Michigan and Wacker, and I've been at my company for 11 years, so I definitely know what that feels like. When you're like the weird one for staying in one place so long.
Yeah, it goes by quick. So my first beer article in the Tribune came out in 2009, and it became more and more of my job as the beer industry became a bigger and bigger thing. And now it's all of my job. The travel writing job doesn't really exist at the Tribune anymore. Fortunately, I had this beer writing thing in my back pocket. Anyway, so the book really sprung out of that work. And, Goose Island has always been like the godfather of Chicago brewing. Yeah. And that was true with the stuff I'd write in the Tribune. You know, Bourbon County is like, it's in all reality, it's less of a big deal now than it was 5 years ago or 10 years ago. But 5 years ago, 10 years ago, it was like the only game in town, for a bourbon barrel-aged stout, more or less. So, Goose Island has just been sort of the linchpin of Chicago brewing, and you could argue Midwest brewing, along with Bell's and New Glarus and, a handful of breweries. Goose Island's always been one of the most interesting breweries I've written about. And once it sold to AB, it went from interesting, well-respected Chicago brewery to, oh my God, those, damn sellouts, what have they done? And, then there'd be the story of Goose Island sort of graduated to this next level. And at that point, I never thought about a book about Goose Island for 2 seconds until the sale. The sale was when it was like, oh my gosh, now the narrative is complete. Right. It's, Star Wars-esque.
Luke has joined the dark side.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Have you talked with any are there other books out there of other breweries like, the breweries that Budweiser or ABInBev bought prior to?
Yeah, did anybody write a book on Wicked Weed? Or
no, not Wicked Weed, but there were two
people
before.
Were pissed about
Goose
that.
Island. The two that are out in Portland or Seattle.
Elysian sold. 10 barrel. Well, Goose, so Anheuser-Busch has bought 10 breweries in the U.S. Goose was the first of the 10. So it worked out for me well.
But I mean, before that, like Red Hook.
Oh yeah, they bought
Rolling
partial
Rock.
stakes, minority stakes in Red Hook and Widmer. Actually,
Widmer,
Widmer
yeah.
is about to be released, but it was commissioned by the Widmers, so it's not. The guy who wrote it is Jeff Allworth, is a really great journalist and beer writer. So I have a lot of faith in the writing and the journalism and the sort of the perspective in there, because I just sort of trust his work. But the book is commissioned by the Widmers, so it comes with that asterisk.
I just wondered if there was a similar upheaval in those parts of the country with that sort of bite. I mean, I've been to Red Hook. It's a nice brewery, very nice setting, but I didn't get the feeling of it being a locally embraced brewery like Goose Island has been.
Well, when Red Hook sold, people started making shirts. They started calling it Bud Hook.
Bud Hook, yeah.
So
Yeah.
I mean, it's like there people get pissed with any and all of these sales, but the rage over the Goose Island sale, the rage over the Elysian sale, and the Wicked Weed sale, those were a different ballgame as compared to the rest.
Okay.
But the answer to your question is, the original question is no, hasn't really been a book like this written, which also played to my advantage. There have been, books about breweries, usually written by the founder. Tony McGee wrote about starting Lagunitas. Sam Calagione wrote about starting Dogfish. There's a few more examples out there.
Was it difficult to approach John to get this one going?
Say again?
Was it difficult to sort of approach John and perhaps Greg?
No. I just called John out of the blue. I still remember I was standing in Wells Park because I lived up there in Lincoln Square. And just the idea had been sort of kicking around my head for a while. And I was standing in Wells Park and just like, screw it, and got the courage up and just... Because I knew once I sort of put it out there, I was actually going to have to really follow through.
He dialed the phone like 4 times and hung up on him, and then he hung up on him again. And
John
and
called
then
back.
he finally answered, and I asked him to go to prom with me. John was very generous with his time and his thoughts. And there were some tough questions asked and some tough conversations had, and it's the book is not nothing but a glowing portrait of Goose Island and its sale to Anheuser-Busch. But Goose Island was a very important brewery along the way, and I certainly, tried to capture all that. I mean, it was, it's been one of the, let's say, 10 or so, all-time important breweries in American craft brewing. I mean, they invented bourbon barrel-aged stout. They get the credit on that one. Yeah. That was a fun part of the story to tell. But then, the story takes this much more complex and, in a sense, darker turn with the sale to AB and what does that mean? And, there were reasons John did it. He had problems he was trying to solve. AB had problems it was trying to solve, and just sort of worked out for both parties in that way.
Now, was there someone on AB side that you were able to get in with and talk to about it? Or the story from the AB side, was that get from other sources?
According to this,
that was a mixed bag. I did talk to several people at AB. AB was generally very open with me, I would say, and accommodating. The only person they would not put me in touch with was the guy who was actually executing all these deals, who was an M&A guy, the business school grad, whose name never came up with any of these things. Like the deal would be sealed and they'd have their sort of chosen people talking about the deal. And the guy who actually really made it happen, this mergers and acquisitions guy, Michael Taylor, who's now running Green Flash in San Diego. He was, in a sense, he was the most important character in the whole thing, but also the one they were trying to keep out of the spotlight. And but they did not put me in touch with him. But I was still able to sort of stitch his story together because he came up and every interview with any brewery founder who sold to AB.
Wow. Well, this
other than that, they were pretty accommodating though.
The selected bibliography in your book is, as I wrote on my notes here, extensive and impressive.
Thank you.
It's 18 pages long.
Is it? Wow. That does sound long. Yeah,
you've got names in here that are impressive, and I'm wondering, like, I mean, obviously that everybody at Goose Island, but I mean, you talked to Greg Koch, however you say his name, and Dick Leinenkogel, and I mean, there's guys that have been big time industry names, and you're actually able to just approach these guys and do interviews, and the sources that you cite throughout this. I mean, I'm not only impressed from the size of the bibliography, but the amount of time that it would take to do all this.
It took a long time and a lot of work. And I had a kid along the way, my first kid. So yeah, I started working on it the Goose Sale was in 2011. I started working on the book either in 2011 or 2012. I honestly can't remember. I should probably just come up with one and make it part of the narrative. But we'll just say 2011. I started in 2011, and it came out in 2018. So that was 7 years between conception and emergence. And it was like a solid 6 years of writing and reporting and ripping stuff up and writing new stuff and interviewing people. And this is while still working at the Trib. So yeah, it took a long time. Would have been nice if I'd been able to pull it off in 3 years. Though actually, that reminds me of another sort of crucial point, was that for a long time there was no end to the story. It's like I had the beginning and the middle, but there was no like natural end to the Goose Island and Anheuser-Busch and craft beer story. Right. And two things happened that sort of gave me the end. And they happened in like 2016 and 2017. One was John Hall sold the Goose Island Brew Pub to Anheuser-Busch. Initially, he'd only sold the production brewery and the brand, but he'd held on to ownership of the brew pub, the original Clybourne Avenue Brew Pub. And then he finally sold that to AB too. So it was sort of like, in a sense, the sellout was complete, with air quotes around sellout.
Everything came full circle with that kind of.
Exactly. And then the Wicked Weed sale sort of put the period on Anheuser-Busch's shopping spree of breweries. So they bought the 10 breweries. Goose Island was the first and Wicked Weed was the last. And it really felt like something was ending with the Wicked Weed sale. It's like Karbach in Houston was the 9th acquisition, and everyone just kind of went, okay, Karbach, whatever, who cares? I mean, some people in Houston cared, obviously, but there wasn't a lot of heat and emotion around the Karbach brand more broadly. But the Wicked Weed sale was like just a kick in the nuts to a lot of people, because people really loved Wicked Weed, and Wicked Weed had built a really impressive brand that sort of resonated across the country. So when that sale went down, the 10th of the 10, it was kind of like, okay, there's sort of a jumping off point here to end the book. So in a sense, I really needed all that time to pull it together in the way that.
And I like how you made the point that you could kind of overlay all of those purchases over a map, and you could kind of see that regional strategy and how it really made sense for them to go after something that was sort of on the southeast, call it. And the backlash Wicked Weed got was crazy. I mean, how they had to cancel that whole event, that sour the Funkatorium. So I had, as I said, Josh, I had listened to some of your other interviews, but I really wanted to ask you, like, do you feel like you take an unbiased perspective in telling this story? Is it hard to not having an opinion strongly one way or the other? Or
do you have an opinion one way?
or do you have an opinion, or has it maybe changed as time has passed since you wrote this?
I mean, I felt like it was pretty important that my job is to just present the information and all the context. for good and for bad, on all sides. I think AB is not thrilled with the book. I think Goose Island is not thrilled with the book. I know the Brewers Association in some parts is not thrilled with the book.
Really?
I think they probably like it more than Goose and AB do, but
Sure.
I had a little pushback from them too on some of my conclusions. So I mean, if I pissed off everyone, then I think I sort of did my job.
That's a great point.
Absolutely.
Really, I'm ultimately on the sort of side of transparency and the reader and the consumer. It's like just explaining this crazy path that craft beer has taken, and especially what happened with the Goose Island sale and everything that followed, all the deals that came subsequently. I really appreciate when someone says, and I heard a lot of this, was that the reader saying, I didn't know how to feel, that at times I was rooting for Goose Island.
Yeah.
At times I was furious at Goose Island. At times I was furious at Anheuser-Busch. At other turns, I completely, came to understand on Anheuser-Busch and then sort of hated myself for it. And then in the end, I just ended up feeling sort of, not neutral, but sort of just falling right in the middle of the whole thing, just sort of understanding it, but not, fully pro big beer or anti big beer or
It's
pro
an
Goose
emotional
Island.
roller coaster.
I
as
mean,
a beer fan.
you should see the
That
text.
was the goal.
The text between the three of us, you could tell where each person was at in the book. Could you get a text like from Chad going, God, I hate it, and I hate AB, and then what the hell did Goose Island do? Just
I went through like all the stages of grief or
Grief,
something.
yeah.
I'm like anger, bargaining, denial. Yeah, it did take me for that ride. Did you ever get feedback specifically from John or Greg? Like, do you know if they read the book?
They read it. I think there's mixed feelings. It's fair to say. I think it's probably really hard to read about yourself in that
Especially when there's
context. So
criticisms,
I understand it. But yeah, I mean, they'd probably need to speak on it anymore if there was any more to say. But I think it's fair to say mixed feelings.
Yeah.
So when John had his meeting announcing the sale, when you talked with him about this, and there's kind of two questions in one here, because I'm curious about the details in the book. And when books like this are written, it's a fascinating thing for me, because I can't remember half the shit in my own life. And if I think about writing a book about my own life, I don't know if I could do it because I can't remember. And when you go and talk with John and Greg and all the characters in the book, and the details start to emerge, is there? I mean, I'm not trying to call you out here or anything, but are the details in the book as accurate as they read? Like when he had that meeting and John reads it, is he reading it like, oh yeah, that's actually how that really happened?
Yeah, no, that's a fair question. And that's something that narrative nonfiction writers need to deal with. And that was the kind of book I was trying to write. It wasn't just, I was not trying to write a dry business story. I was trying to write narrative nonfiction and putting you in that room and stitching that scene together. I will say, yes, it's all accurate. And the way I did it was by talking to, there were, I can't remember, 75 people in that room, and I probably talked to 40 of them. Just trying to stitch I would just try to wring every detail I could from every interview. And it's probably weird to be interviewed by someone who's writing a book, because, you're asking the most ridiculous details, asking for the most ridiculous details, precisely to stitch that narrative together. But when you're being interviewed about it, it's like, why do you need to know, what I was wearing?
But
like,
it helps visualize.
Who cares if I was wearing a jacket or a scarf or a hat or gloves but it's like, no, it's like, well, if that room was cold, I want to see how that room was cold. What were you wearing? And it's like, oh, okay. And a lot of it, by the time I was having those conversations, in some cases it had been, anywhere from 2 to 5 years after the fact. So, you run into a lot of dead ends, but you just, just keep asking the questions, talk to as many people as you can, and just stitch it together bit by bit. And then you go back and then you sort of check facts against other people. Like, you know, so-and-so said that it was really cold in the room. Do you remember it being cold? Oh, yeah, it was really cold. I forgot about that, blah, 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 blah. Or it could be, you know, no, I have no recollection of that. And just little things I was trying to pin down, like, did John Hall, when he made the announcement, talk through a microphone, or did he not? And it's like everyone had a different answer to that. And I can't remember how I finally broke to. I think John just told me whatever it was.
It's interesting you bring that point up specifically, because when I was reading that part, that was in my mind. Like, I'm trying to picture how this is all set up. He's on the loading dock, and did they have a portable speaker or something where almost 100 people can hear him, or is he just projecting his voice? And what does this actually look like?
Right, and that's what I was trying to stitch together. Exactly, that kind of thing.
That's very cool. Very cool.
And that chapter felt like that was one of the ones that felt most important to me. It's like the whole book in a way. It's the middle chapter of the book. It's, you know, it's the 50-yard line of the whole thing, and that chapter felt like I really had to nail that. Like the whole thing sort of turned on that chapter. So I worked as harder on that one as any of them.
I think that was the best part of the book, the most raw, emotional, talking about, you know, Greg standing quiet in the corner, talking about people crying, people being angry. You got other people that have been working there forever that are going upstairs to smoke their last joint. People are going to bars to drink and, you know, commiserate. I did want to ask you, Josh, and I don't know if this is something that can be an unbiased response, but, like, do you think that when this sale happened, you know, Greg felt like he just lost something? Like, I don't know if soul or heart or whatever it was, but the way his last day was the day before the deal went through, and the way that he went to that birthday party and, you know, had the incident filling the mugs and said it's beer, you know, and not showing up on that last day when they closed the brew pub and they were going to do the renovations. I mean, did that create friction, do you think, between him and his dad, or do you think that was a really big, you know, miss for him, like that he didn't inherit that company?
That was actually one of the...
I felt it was there, but it just didn't go further than that.
It what?
Because I felt like there was something there, but that maybe out of...
yeah. Well, no, I mean, it's, you know, the intention was to sort of lay it out there and let the reader draw their own conclusion. And I think you hit on, I think, a lot of the important points that are, you know, supposed to be the dotted lines that lead to a conclusion. I mean, I believe at one point I spell out about how he was devastated by the sale. And he was, you know, Michael Roper at Hopleaf said that, you know, Greg came in and gave him a heads up a couple days before, and Greg he was putting on a brave face, but he seemed, you know, his enthusiasm was clearly half-hearted and even seemed embarrassed by the whole thing. And at another point, I can't remember the exact language, but it's something about him perhaps being devastated or something. And yeah, I think that's a fair takeaway. I mean, Greg was a really good soldier. I mean, Greg got paid to be a good soldier too. He, you know, has been on the payroll the entire time since the sale, earning a nice salary to, I don't think, do a whole hell of a lot on behalf of Goose, and now Goose and Virtue Cider.
I was going to say, ABV kind of saved him, right? Because they bought out his Virtue Cider that was struggling a little bit, right?
Yep. Yes, indeed. But yeah, Greg was a good soldier. He, you know, spoke positively of the deal. But yeah, deeper down, it's pretty clear, and based on interviews with, you know, some of the people closest to him, that he was, his compass was knocked off course, let's say, by the sale. Absolutely. That doesn't mean he didn't understand it, I think. But I think it also did hurt. And what I was going to say initially was that was one of the sort of driving questions for me at the beginning of the book writing process, was trying to make sense of why Greg didn't get it. You know, like, it was would have been so natural for Goose Island to be passed on to Greg, and Greg to run it as a family-owned company into the next generation. I mean, John Hall was the businessman, and technically made Goose Island what it was, but Greg was the visionary, and he made Goose Island as valuable as it was. And I trying to make sense of why John sold to Anheuser-Busch instead of figuring out a way to send it to his son, the brewmaster of 20 years, was initially one of the sort of the overarching questions of the whole endeavor.
And the impression I got was in a larger sense that John and really believed Goose needed them, and that they were really struggling with production and struggling to do anything but 312 or whatever some of their other most popular lines. I mean, they were shutting down beers that were winning awards. But I think also reading in between the lines, what I kind of got was Greg was, a visionary, was a brand, was Goose, but that he didn't really have the same business, acumen as his father. Like, he was late for meetings, he could be aloof.
Mm-hmm.
So maybe I don't know, but the what I thought underneath there was maybe his dad thought that I need to turn this over to business people to keep this thing going. Or maybe he really wanted his dream of seeing it sold everywhere in the U.S. and everywhere in the world, because that happened.
Or both.
Yeah, or both.
But I think you're onto something with both of those, honestly. In retrospect, selling to AB made a ton of sense for John. He got paid, a nice chunk. Obviously, it's not what brewery owners are getting paid 5 years on, but still, he built something worth nearly $40 million. I'll take $40 million. Mm-hmm. And with AB, he was going to be able to see his brand all over the country and potentially all over the world. And that is, in fact, what happened. And, if the company had gone to Greg, it would have continued to be a slog for Goose Island, and they still had a ton of problems to solve. And by selling to AB, they solved a lot of those problems. They also created a whole bunch of new problems that come with selling to AB. But it also makes plenty of sense why he made that choice, especially considering his background, which was as a a white collar finance guy. I mean, he was a business guy, through and through.
Yeah.
So you mentioned the $38 million or whatever,
38.8.
And this chapter actually was one of the most enjoyable ones that I wrote. We talked a little bit about it before we started the show. Chapter 18, it doesn't count as a sellout until you hit $40 million. And the tweets that ensued after this.
Yeah, it was that was a fun one to do. Just digging through the vitriol and the response across Twitter and across various social media and the blogs. I mean, it's easy to forget now, 8 years almost. Is it? Yeah, eight years almost on. But it was such a holy shit moment, I mean, it was just, Anheuser-Busch had bought a minority stake in Red Hook and a minority stake in Widmer in the 90s. But this was, Darth Vader buying all of whatever, Luke Skywalker. I'm not enough of a Star Wars fan to see that one through. But, it was the first time Anheuser-Busch had, the big bad bully of American beer, had bought 100% of an American craft brewery. And as I say in the book, for years, AB and craft beer were parallel lines. And with that sale, the lines had intersected. And it was a stunning moment. And that's what that chapter is meant to reflect, is all that. And now it's, AB buys a brewery. It's like, oh, there goes, there go those guys again. But in 2011, it was really unprecedented. It was just like, holy crap, what just happened here?
Well, it's a little bit later in the book, but I love when you quote Greg Koch, coach, and you say, Anheuser-Busch InBev, he became fond of saying was the Borg. I wasn't like a huge Star Trek guy, but I definitely got the reference. And
everybody gets that.
you can say they're evil, they're not evil. They're just consuming. They're just growing, and they just grow and they consume and they just keep going. I mean, it's not really about good and bad. It's just about business and. But then right above that, I think you say if a corporation were a person, they would be like a psycho or a pathological, like without feeling or something.
That was not me making that comparison. That was a documentary called The Corporation, but I thought it was just fascinating and sort of shed some light on Anheuser-Busch's move into craft beer.
Yep. I didn't mean to misquote you. Yeah, that's.
Oh yeah, no, that's okay. And I thought the interview with Greg was really interesting because, Greg, the founder of Stone Brewing, is he's typically one of the outspoken guys, and he's in the process of suing.
You could say that.
Yeah.
And he's super rah craft beer and big beer's the enemy and all that stuff. But I was really looking forward to that interview, but he was also very dispassionate about the whole thing, which I was really surprised me, but also sort of inspired how I looked at it a little bit. It's like it's basically what you just said. It's not that big beer is bad. It's that big beer is big beer, and this is what they do. And and that's, he made the comparison to the Borg, and it's, you don't get angry at the Borg because the Borg is the Borg. You just resist the Borg, and that I was really sort of impressed with, again, how dispassionate he was about the whole thing. It wasn't personal. It was business, and that's really what this is. It's beer, but it's business. And that's why it drives me a little crazy when people, most notably AB, when they're just trying to like blend into the crowd, it's like, hey man, we're cool craft beer people too. Yeah. It's, hey man, it's beer. It's supposed to be fun. And that's a cop out. Beer is fun, but beer is also business. And that's why AB's getting into it, or has gotten.
We had an interesting experience this past summer at a brewery. The three of us did. And I won't say the brewery, but a Northside brewery where they had their, I think it was an anniversary party.
5th year anniversary.
It's Only Child. We can say their name. It's Only Child. Is that what you're talking about?
So Only Child.
In Gurney. Yeah.
Yeah. Where we went for the party, had a great time, tasting a bunch of good beers, and we're sitting towards the back. Josh, I'm sure, have you been there?
I've not actually.
Okay. It's a very, very small brewery. It could almost be a nano, really. And it's just in the back you have all the fermenters, and here comes the owner. Well, no, one of the bar people carrying a case of Miller Lite.
She was carrying it out to the back, the garage out back.
So they put this in a cooler. Like, what the fuck's going on here? They put it in a cooler, and then you see the owner go back there with a tall stein, basically.
Well, do you remember the T-shirt the owner was wearing?
No, he was wearing Miller Lite.
Was it a Miller Lite shirt?
Just said light, but it was a Miller stein.
Yeah. So go ahead, Jed.
Yeah. Well, I mean, we thought, are they back there drinking Miller Lite? We're the three. Well, Adam's wife.
Well, us suckers are drinking their double IPA.
Well, and we're like going through your book at the time, and we're like, "Well, I'm done with this big beer," and just all fired up.
But we got the answer. We asked whatever her name is,
Charlotte. I remember Charlotte. I still got her card
with the pink hair. And we're like, "What's going on? We're here for your anniversary party." He's wearing a light shirt, and now we see that you've got a 24-pack out back. And they're all drinking it. So what's the story here? And the answer we got was, you'll see this across almost every micro nano brewery where they brew their beer. They love it. But at some point, enough is enough. And we just want to drink a beer and not have to think about it.
Mm-hmm.
And I just was reminded of this when you were just talking about beer being a business.
Yeah.
They're there to brew good beer, and they're doing a very good job of it. Only Child has some fantastic beer.
And charge us $7 or $8.
Yeah, and charge us $7 or $8 per pour.
It was kind of a weird moment, though.
Right.
But it gave us perspective.
That would make me feel shitty as a customer, honestly. I think I'm here to support you on your anniversary, and you're back there drinking Miller Lite. So why don't I just go home and drink some Miller Lite?
Yeah, it was weird.
They weren't just drinking it; they were back there shotgunning it.
Pretty much.
They were slamming them back there, and I mean it wouldn't have been quite so bad if he wasn't wearing the light shirt to his own anniversary party. But,
yeah, that's kind of weird. I don't know if that's completely super duper punk rock or just kind of lazy and thoughtless of the customer.
I don't think he gave a shit, really. But I mean,
no, he doesn't look like a guy that gives a shit.
No, not at all. I mean, and if that's what they do on a daily basis, that's fine. They do make good beer, but all of us were like, "Whoa, this was a fun party." And now I kind of feel really weird about being here. But it really puts that into perspective.
Back there, yeah.
Well, but Josh, you just wrote an article about how much you love Miller Lite, right?
Well, I wrote an article about how I prefer it to Bud Light. That's for damn sure. The occasions where I actually want a Miller Lite are pretty rare. I mean, if what am I drinking now? I'm drinking a 4.7 lager. Miller Lite is a 4.5 lager.
Right.
I'm gonna generally drink I like light lager too, but I'm gonna generally drink something that tastes better than a Miller Lite. I don't understand why brewers, drink what you like. Brewers love Miller High Life. I don't get it. I don't care for Miller High Life at all. I do think I prefer Miller Lite to Miller High Life personally. And there's other good macro beers. I like hams. I wrote an article about hams. That's good stuff.
Josh, if I could ask you the last question about the book, near the end it says.
Let me throw one other thing out there. I think it's also important not to sort of fetishize, and we're probably all craft beers drinkers do this to a degree, and maybe I implicitly do it with some of my writing. I don't know, but to fetishize like craft beer and craft brewery owners. I mean, there's, there are some of those people are assholes. Some of those people make bad beer. Yeah. It's like just because it's quote unquote craft or quote unquote independent doesn't mean it's good, obviously. And I mean, that sort of goes without saying, right? But it's also, I also feel like in the craft beer versus big beer narrative, we do sort of like idealize what it means to be craft beer when in fact, sometimes that let's put it this way, sometimes that can be more meaningful in a positive way for some people as compared to others.
Yeah.
Well, but I think that gets back to people want to identify themselves with something they're proud of and something that they think is unique and stands for something and has, some integrity or, whatever word they want to define it by. And I think sometimes it's hard to, I struggle very much so with the commercials and the marketing these days that are making me feel bad for caring about taste and
dilly.
Yeah, like I really I really get upset with that because it's like, listen, I don't want to come into a room and be a snob and make somebody feel bad about what they like drinking, but at the same time, I don't think I'm a bad guy either for looking for something more. Like, and then on the flip side, when you go and you market, like the copper lager differently, it just kind of, it's like you're playing both sides, and it's just like,
they're completely playing both sides. I mean, the initial pumpkin peach commercial, during the Super Bowl back in whatever that was, 2015 or 16, I think it was 16, happened 3 weeks after they bought Elysian. So it's like, okay, this is what it's come to. Anheuser-Busch is mocking craft beer and they're buying craft breweries. Right. That is what Anheuser-Busch is.
Yeah.
They're really, as a company, forever talking out of both sides of their mouth. But they're also so big that they've, there are many masters to serve. So, intellectually it makes sense. But then I think then the question for the consumer is, well, is that who you want to give your money to?
Right.
And if you do, then fine. But just at least I feel like my role in what the book is just hopefully the means to have the conversation. It's like Anheuser-Busch just doesn't want you to think about those things. And I'm saying, hey, let's think about them, let's talk about them, and then just make an informed decision. And if you want to drink nothing but Bud Light and Elysian, God bless you. But if you want to, go drink only Child and Half Acre, then that makes some sense too.
Yep.
Well, I would ask you, I mean, can I call it Goose or whatever it doesn't even have to be Goose, whatever the brewery is, if it's made somewhere else. I mean, many times this is mentioned in the book, but specifically near the end, it says much of the beer from the nation's second largest craft beer company was coming from the same tanks as Bud Light. And like, can we still call that Goose Island? Do we know that the ingredients haven't been, replaced by cheaper ingredients? Do we know? How do I know in the future that
you don't?
What's really made in Chicago and what's really? I mean, how do I know that someday they don't want to scale up BCS everywhere and I don't know where it's getting made? I mean,
you don't know, and you're not supposed to know. Is the short answer.
And do the labels
it's really
on the
that simple?
Do the labels make a difference where it says brewed bottle, or does it say bottled in Chicago or bottled in? What's their other location?
No, it doesn't. They don't make any distinction.
There's no.
They used to.
You have to know how to read the label to be able to tell whether it's made by Goose or made by AB. But it's on very fine print on like the back of the label. Basically, if it says made by Goose Island, Chicago, Illinois, that means it's made by Goose Island in Chicago. If it says something like Goose Island, Chicago, Illinois, Baldwinsville, New York, Fort Collins, Colorado, and then there's a couple other breweries, but those are the two big ones, the AB breweries where it's made, Baldwinsville and Fort Collins. If it says Goose Island and has basically cities other than Chicago listed in addition to Chicago, then it's made by AB, not in Chicago. But there's no way you'd ever know. There's no way that 99.9999% of customers could tell when standing there in the grocery store, which is when most people make their shopping decisions.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay, but those of us that are in the know, if you're in the grocery store and you're looking at labels, is there a on a federal level, is there a requirement for a beer that's brewed in, say, Fort Collins, and can they throw a brewed or bottled in Chicago label on it? Or does it have, if it says Chicago, it is for sure, we know it's brewed in Chicago?
Well, they get tricky with that, honestly.
And you may not know this is just a curiosity question.
Yeah, no, I mean, there's
kind of goes beyond the book.
Get into it in the book, and when they do this with all the breweries that they bought, there's a good example is Golden Road, which is in Los Angeles, and I'm trying to remember the exact something like it's like their Wolf Pup IPA, and it says on the can in big letters, Golden Road, Los Angeles. But the beer is made like 300 miles north at an Anheuser-Busch brewery. So they could put, Los Angeles or Chicago or New York or Mars on the front of the can. It's the fine print is where the truth lies. And yeah, they're playing fast and loose with that kind of marketing all over the place with their craft brands.
But there is so what I take from that is there is some truth in the labeling then.
That they're being honest in the labeling?
Yes.
Not
sounds like they're
really.
trying to hide it.
Know how to read the label. I mean, it's they will do everything they can to sort of associate the beer with a particular place. With Goose Island, that's Chicago. But in the fine print in the back, if you know what to look for, then you can see, yes, it is made by Anheuser-Busch. But it'll say on the front, Goose Island Beer Company, Chicago. And then it'll say on the back, next time you're in Chicago, swing by the brewery and say hi, 1800 West Fulton Street. And that's a beer made by Anheuser-Busch in New York. But again, to figure that out, you have to squint and look at the fine print.
Is there anybody going against a grain? Is there anybody bigger than just a regional brewer that's, trying to just be completely transparent and just saying, hey, it was brewed here, but it's great beer? Is there?
No.
Nope.
No. I mean, it's, Miller's got one of the great examples of all time with the quote unquote Blue Moon Brewing Company. There's no Blue Moon Brewing Company.
Right.
Miller makes those beers. I mean, there's like with Blue Moon, like little tiny breweries in Denver. There's one at the Rockies ballpark, and I think then they opened another one in Denver. But basically, when it comes to Blue Moon, which sells a ton of beer, that is the biggest selling craft beer in the nation. There's no Blue Moon Brewing Company. That is a Miller product, 100%.
It's funny you mentioned that. I was at Chili's, and their menu says craft beer is here, and the first one listed is Blue Moon.
Oh yeah.
Well,
the revolution is on. It's on. Please.
You go to the Cubs game, and they have like the chalk sign, and it says like craft beer, but it's like Shock Top and
312
and Goose Island.
312.
And that gets to why the revolution was on. I mean, Anheuser-Busch needed craft brands. They needed them in Wrigley Field. They needed them in the supermarkets and at the concert, arenas and things like that. And so they didn't have any, and so they had to buy Goose Island. Then they bought 9 more, kept on going.
I mean, what I thought was in the book was funny, but also surprising to me is that they couldn't figure out how to do it on their own. Like they couldn't figure out how to make a good beer that craft would like on their own.
Some were better than others. The problem was that it's just like there's no like compelling craft story behind like a Michelob porter made in St. Louis by Anheuser-Busch brewers. It's like craft beer drinkers didn't want that.
Identify with something.
Yeah.
And they would push it out so fast. Like when they first had Goose, they just wanted to rush everything to market here and there. There was no build up, no connection.
Right. And the connection is a huge part of craft.
The what's that, Copper Lager? Right.
That's the new one, right?
Yeah. I mean, it's
Jim
very
Beam.
tasty.
Is it?
It is. It's tasty, but it's still, it's like, but I don't buy it again because you're right. There's no connection to that. Like, it's just like, it's good,
We had to try it though. I mean,
I did have to try it. Yeah.
It's one of those, their marketing actually worked on me. I was like, oh, I like whiskey and they're partnering with Jim Beam. So I'm going to try that.
That's the next one. That's the next one you should look at. You should get the whiskey industry. I heard that's pretty messed up too.
The whiskey industry is something else.
Yeah, the labels are completely wrong on that. One company makes them for a whole bunch of them. But what did you think of the Goose Island Kickathon? Nobody made anything. A big PR stunt, a really good one. What was your thoughts on that whole thing?
A huge PR stunt and a really, really good one. In some ways, it feels like the most effective thing Goose Island has done since it became part of Big Beer. It was like the best of craft beer and the best of being part of Big Beer.
Yeah.
In terms of having tons of resources and being able to pull something like that off, and then social media the hell out of it, and it's just like, and they were rewarded for it. They got all sorts of crazy coverage.
Did anybody walk away with anything? I mean, I know everybody missed, but were there any other prizes given out for, I don't know, kicking the guy in the nuts with the ball or something? I don't know if anybody got
give
anything.
out beer in Illinois for free.
They donated $20,000 to Lurie Children's Hospital, which good on them.
Yeah.
But no one made it. So
there's a couple that were close that I saw, but for the most part, it was.
There's a couple that was left, but they got it up there.
There were some guys that they had the distance but not the accuracy. A couple of guys were straight but didn't have the length.
The nuthead was the best. Yeah,
it was crazy though, Josh.
It was great. I give them all credit on that. That was a fun idea, and it caught fire, because it was a great idea.
Yeah.
Kind of blew my mind reading the book and realizing how much for so long Anheuser-Busch controlled things through distribution. But then Adam showed me your Twitter handle, and I started following you, and how you were talking about recently controlling the message, and and it's like, gosh, the Borg, Big Beer, AB, whoever it is, they keep finding ways to control this at every layer, every point.
Yeah.
They're really leaving no stone unturned in this entry into craft beer, which makes sense. They're being thorough, and craft beer is not just about, for decades Anheuser-Busch could just make sort of relatively flavorless beer consistently, and then advertise it on TV and call it a day, right? And craft beer is like the antithesis of all that. And so Anheuser-Busch is very much covering its bases now by, wading into all these different things, including beer media. And shockingly, the Anheuser-Busch's beer media website just so happens to put Anheuser-Busch craft beer on its best of lists. And,
they sneak them in there, It's not like the one that you're for sure know they own, but they sneak them into like this top 5 list and that top 5 list.
The biggest issue, I would say, is the lack of transparency. They're not making clear for customers or readers. Yes, this website is owned and operated by people answering to Anheuser-Busch, and these are Anheuser-Busch beers we're recommending. If they were transparent about that, then there'd be a little less to sort of raise your eyebrow at. But the fact is that they are sort of quietly promoting these Anheuser-Busch beers on this site that exists due to Anheuser-Busch. And it's, whether or not Anheuser-Busch directly planted those beers in those lists, I don't know. They say they don't. I'll take them at their word. But the fact that they're there still speaks volumes towards, Anheuser-Busch's role in the whole thing, and on so many fronts, including the message, the media that we read,
So Josh, what if you go on a trip, business or, family, whatever it is, and you I want a beer, and you go into a bar and you look at their tap handles, and every tap handle, not everybody would know this, but this is owned by ABInBev. Like, do you stay? Do you order a beer? What do we do? Is that our future?
Where everything is owned by AB?
I think the good news is that in a handful of spots you'll probably see that. The one place that people, at Wrigley Field, for instance, 90, and until this, things started to thaw a little bit this year, but until this year, 92% of the beer, I'm making that number up, but it is a shockingly large amount of the beer poured at Wrigley Field was Anheuser-Busch beer. Actually, it's probably more than that. It was probably 98%. They stopped sending Old Style through the aisles with the vendors, and the vendors were carrying Bud Light, Goose IPA, and Goose 312.
Yep.
That did start to thaw a little bit this year. There's some Lagunitas handles there now, which is good. I'm pro diversity. I think if it was all Lagunitas, that would be bad too.
Right.
But
I went
point
to
is,
one Cubs game and they had Daisy Cutter.
There's one place where you could get Daisy Cutter cans, and there's one booth where you could get Fist City on tap from Revolution, which is what I tend to drink when I go there. There are, airports are generally seen as an example of places that an AB distributor are able to lock down. So yeah, you might find some places, and in the book, I get into this bar in Seattle that was 100% AB, and that was breaking the law, and they got, Anheuser-Busch got fined for that. But largely, we're a nation of more than 7,000 breweries now. So the diversity is out there. Actually, what I'd point to as an example is another thing on my blog that I wrote is there's a beer menu at the United Center, which really I just found fascinating. There were 45 beers available at the craft beer bar there. And I was sort of looking, and I was like, wait a second, that's an AB brand, that's an AB brand, that's an AB brand. And it wasn't all 45 by any stretch, but it was 21 of the 45 or something like that. The piece is on my website. joshnoel.net, if I'm allowed to say that.
Absolutely. Sure.
And I think the title of the blog post was something about illusion of choice. But that's what illusion of choice, when the critics complain about it, it's, what looks like a whole bunch of breweries being represented, in fact, is ultimately one beer company. So that was the United Center menu is really a stunning example of that. It wasn't all of them, but it was it was 40, more than 40% of the beer was owned by Anheuser-Busch, but you would never know it by looking at it. So yeah, the casual consumer is not meant to recognize that, will not recognize that, and is, will probably fall into the trap. I always just tell people I'm a big fan of just informing yourself and, understanding how you're spending your money. And then if you want to buy Elysian Space Dust on draft at the United Center, a product made by Anheuser-Busch, not Elysian, then you know what you're doing. But if you want to buy a buckle down beer from, small, independently owned, by these two guys, brewery in the suburbs of Chicago, then do that. It's we're not going there to that extreme 100%, I don't think, generally, but it is the waters are cloudy for sure, and they're meant to be. That's part of AB's game here.
Oh yeah, confuse the message or confuse the consumer. Confuse the consumer. Yeah, when you go look at the shelf space, you don't know what you're picking really. Where do you see craft beer? In I don't know, 10, 15 years. Like what do you envision craft beer being? Is it like Jake the doomsday guy here saying it's going to be all 100% AB, or
as long as Revolution doesn't sell the AB, I'll be fine.
Yeah, as long as Rev doesn't sell. Or is it, or do we see you think we're going to see a bounce back or a pushback, or
I don't think you can assume that any brewery won't sell at this point. I mean,
well, and one thing we've talked about before on the show is for part of me doesn't blame any of these guys for selling, like the founders doing 30%,
right.
Because it's hard. You get to the certain size where it's like, oh shit, if I keep pushing, I'm going to crumble. If I don't keep pushing, I can't keep going. There's that tipping point, and that's where most of them end up going, we need money,
Yeah, I feel like people tend not to blame the sellers all that much. I mean, there's some animosity, of course, and there was a fair bit of it directed at, for instance, the guys behind Wicked Weed. They took some slings and arrows for sure.
Yeah.
But just for instance, Tony McGee, built something pretty impressive at Lagunitas, and he deserves to be a rich guy. He built it. He earned it. Yeah, I mean, it's unfortunate when he had gone on Twitter a couple of years earlier and decried selling out and said, when you sell out, you're selling out everyone who works for you and blah, blah, blah. And then 2 years later, he was the guy,
Right. Then there's a check across the desk from you, and you're like, oh, wait a minute. Maybe it doesn't look too bad.
Yeah. Well, that's the thing is, and I try to make that point like the Breckenridge founder decried selling to AB after Elysian did. And then less than a year later, he had sold to AB. And it's just like, yeah, I mean, okay, there's a degree of hypocrisy there. That's plain as day, but also let's put ourselves in those shoes, and someone's offering you $100 million.
Yeah. How do you walk from that?
Right.
Yeah,
and you've already invested how much of your own money, and you've already spent how much of your own time and your own blood.
Exactly. I mean, they've earned it.
It's kind of like being mad at Jason Hayward, like, yeah.
I'm still mad at Jason Hayward.
He sucks, but I mean, can I blame him for signing that check?
Right?
Yeah,
he
gave
the
it. He's a
speech.
great
Yeah.
motivator.
Hey, be careful. That's Chad's favorite player. We know that, right?
No, I never said that. You guys
Defensive
keep doing this too
metrics.
much.
Whatever. Now he jumps up. He's all upset.
Well, Josh, we want to be respectful of your time here. I know we got started a little bit late, but it is getting late. We've got a multitude of questions left for you, but I don't know how much time you want to spend with us tonight.
I would love to, but we're going on vacation tomorrow, so we gotta
sweet.
Oh,
that's always a good day.
Rest up and get ready to deal with the kids in the airport tomorrow.
That's always a fun time.
Well, why don't we go around the horn here? If there's any last questions that could be answered quickly, so we can.
We'll do speed round. Go for it.
Speed questions. Boom, boom. Jake, go.
No questions. Just thank you, Josh, for coming on. I really enjoyed the book. I guess. Well, if I can ask, do you have plans for another book has any parallels to this, or just any other books coming out that?
Yeah, I'm starting to think about my next book. It won't be about the beer industry though, but I'm still figuring it out. But got ideas I'm kicking around.
Well, I encourage you to go because we got readers. I hope you do find that next one because I want to read the next one.
Thanks. Even if it's not about beer.
Absolutely.
Thank you. I appreciate that.
I would totally agree, man. I love your writing style. It held my interest. It took me a little while to get going, just because I started reading it in the summer, and I've got other things that take my time. But yeah, you're a fantastic writer. So
well, be honest, Chad. In order to get you to read his second one, we have to book him for an interview first, and then you'll speed read the second one like you did this one. Right? That's what happened.
I
Just
read
be
it
honest.
all. I did read it all.
I consumed it as soon as I got it. It was fantastic.
So I've got two real quick questions. One is, you don't have to answer this one if you don't want to.
But I'm going to ask it anyway.
I don't think I've ever declined to answer a question. I'm pretty.
Who is your daddy and what does he do?
Openness and transparency. So just go for it.
Do you have any opposition to purchasing Goose Island beer at this point, whether it's BCS or
good one? No, I do not. That said, after spending all those years working on that book, I try to be deliberate with how I do spend my money. I'm a big believer in small business and small business people. And at every turn I've said, we live in an Amazon world, and that's how a lot of people buy a lot of stuff, and I do too, and it's the easy way to do it. So yeah, please buy my book on Amazon. But I prefer if you would go to your local indie bookstore and buy it there. Right. So I've been sort of tooting that horn ever since the book came out. So yes, please, if anyone's hearing this and is interested in buying it, please support your local bookstore. And that sort of carries over into my beer buying choices too. That said, I really liked Bourbon County wheat wine this year. And if I could have found a bottle, which I couldn't because I'm not willing to stand in line, but if I come across a bottle that is reasonably priced, yeah, I'll buy it because I like that beer. That said, if I'm going to a party, will I buy a 72 pack of Goose Island IPA? Absolutely not, because that, I think that beer does not reflect the best of what a craft beer industry IPA is, as much as they're trying to continue to position it as that. That's, that'll never be my pick on that front. So there you go.
Well, my other question is just, how are book sales going?
They've gone well. I mean, I wish they were like Stephen King well, but but the book has done well. It's really resonated well. I've been invited to do have a lot of conversations like this, which is always fun. And it's, the whole thing's just gone well, and it's sold well, and people have been interested. And I think people were really ready and interested. Ready for the story to be told. They were interested in the story. People wanted to sort of understand craft beer in the broader context of from scrappy upstart that is a response to big beer to commandeered by big beer and how that happened and what it means. And, it got a review in the Wall Street Journal, which was like one of the cool sort of crossover moments. It's like, and what we talked about at the beginning where it's like the book can and has appealed to people beyond the hardest core beer nerds and people who are just looking for like an interesting business story. So it's, I've been lucky. It's done well, and I hope it continues to. And I appreciate you guys having me on to talk about it.
Yeah. I mean, I don't have a question. I was just going to say, thank you for coming on. And like we both all said, the book is amazing. Also, if you guys don't, Hop Notes is the Twitter. I actually have it set up so I get alerted when you tweet. So I know when you wake up, but when you start tweeting. But it's always interesting stuff. I mean, every time, even if you're replying to somebody that's giving you attitude, I love watching those ones too.
I actually try to engage with those people less. That's been one sort of evolution I've had on the Twitter in the last year or even 6 months. Is just like, I don't know, when someone's bitching at me, if they have a good point that is worth responding to, okay. But if it's
What's their main complaint? Are you shilling for the big guy? I mean, what's their?
Oh, I don't know. Just I don't even. Twitter's such a ridiculous place.
It is. Yeah, it's a great place, and on the other hand, it's a horrible place. So
exactly. Yeah.
Well, thank you again a lot. We really appreciate it. Josh Noel, right? .net. Is that right? .net.
Correct. Yeah. .com was taken. And then someone tried to sell it to me, and I told them to go get screwed.
And then Hop Notes on Twitter, and of course, be sure to get his book Barrel Aged Stout and selling out on Amazon or preferably your local bookseller. So,
yeah, preferably your local.
Fantastic read. Excellent read.
Awesome read. Thank you very much.
Thanks, Josh.
Have a good vacation.
Thank you.
Good luck with the kids in the airport.
Thanks, Josh.
Bye.
So, what did you guys think of the interview? I mean, what just off the bat, Chad? What did you think?
I mean, as soon as we were done, the first words I said was, "That was fucking awesome." I thought the interview went really, really well, and I thought it was well thought out, well prepared. It was well prepared, but when you're interviewing someone, it's not the interviewee that really makes the interview a quality piece. How do I say that right? It's not the interviewer, it's the interviewee. So Josh, the way he responded to our questions and totally engaged with us, I felt totally helped make that a really, really good piece. I mean, for our first go at an interview, I thought it was great.
Yeah,
I loved it.
Fun. Jake,
I want to do it again.
I think I know why, and additionally why I hope Josh writes more is because he's a very easy person to talk to.
Yeah,
and he's very knowledgeable. He's very professional, but he's also very real and transparent. But he does it in a way that's journalistic. Like, he'll give you an honest answer, but he does it in a way where he's not telling you how to feel. He's just giving you the information.
Exactly. Yeah.
But yeah, and he didn't shy away from any question that we asked.
Nope. No, and that's what I like about him and like about the book. The book really didn't try to push you one way or the other. As we kind of talked about with him in the interview, we all had those emotional coasters, but really when you look at it, he was just delivering us the information. He was telling us this is what happened, this is what happened, this is what happened.
I respectfully slightly disagree with that.
Yeah, all right.
But I believe that he believes that that's what he was trying to accomplish, and I think for the most part he did. But if I was to play devil's advocate to that point, I would say that, I'll just make one quick observation.
All right.
Just look, and I wanted, and I thought about saying this to Josh, but we had already covered so much, and I felt like he was so great with many of his answers. Maybe if we interview him again, I'll get to. But think about some of this. Chapter 17, not fuck it up. Chapter 18, it doesn't count as a sellout until you hit 40 million. Chapter 30, you sold out to Big Beer again. I mean, I'm telling you.
But weren't those quotes from other people said that?
But these are the names of the chapters of the book.
Yeah, he's not pulling any punches here.
I mean, he does. Don't get me wrong. He does a great job of presenting not necessarily the sides, but the logic of why this all came together. He does. And it is a roller coaster of opinion and emotion, especially depending on how invested you are in the beer that you drink,
right?
Or what you think of small business versus big business. But I do think, I mean, the name of chapter 2, and I'll end with this. The name of the chapter is they serve you at Budweiser. You take one sip and spit it out and say, "Oh my God, I'm drinking water." I don't think that is quite necessarily the unbiased journalistic approach that he believes that it is.
Yeah, but aren't those quotes from within the chapter?
I agree, but that doesn't mean they had to be the titles of the chapter.
What do you want him to call him?
I don't know. I'm not a writer with the talent that Josh is.
I think
I can't answer that for you.
I don't take that as bias. But I take it as drawing from within the chapter and naming it, and I think it draws an eye, if anything.
I completely agree that this is just me conjecture. I don't know. I'm not saying I'm right. I could most certainly be wrong, but my personal opinion is that there's a little more bias than maybe he even realizes.
Yeah.
And I think, if you make a book and you spend that much time and you get to know those people,
You've got to develop something.
It's going to happen.
Yeah. I mean, it's like human nature, natural to develop something. And I don't blame him at all. The book is extremely well written. The amount of time he spent, the interviews that he did, the length he went to,
the time he
to get
spent
this.
While still going to a job and still having a young family.
Yeah. It's just,
it's incredible.
Yeah. It's nuts. What, Chad, you have, what's the one takeaway from that interview? Anything hit you that stands out to you? Like you're walking away going, I didn't know that, or, anything.
I guess the amount of time that it took to actually write this book, and I not that it surprised me really, but to be dedicated to that project for that long. I mean, it took 6 years, right, to write it.
5, 6
7
years.
Yeah,
something like that.
Whatever it was. I mean, and when I got to the end of the book, and I started looking, I didn't read every page of the 18 pages of bibliography. That part right there was so impressive to me that he would take the time to cite 18 pages worth of bibliography. Yeah. I'm like, wow, this guy was really dedicated to this project, and that was just super impressive.
Fantastic point, Chad. I mean, his diligence, how thorough he was. I really enjoyed your question of, the authenticity of the situations that he presented, and it was really fascinating for him to go into detail how essentially what he has to do is ask, these questions that feel like minutia or just so specific, but while he's not only gathering a story, he's also validating all of these interviews against each other.
Well, right. I mean, when he's creating a picture for the reader by taking, he said he interviewed about 40 people out of the 75, 85, whatever were in that room during that meeting when John Hall announced that the Goose had been sold or was going to be sold. To take the majority of the people that were there, get their stories down to the smallest little details, and then be able to condense that into 2 pages? Not even 2 pages was the actual meeting.
Mm-hmm. Well,
and
yeah, I mean,
there's a whole chapter on it, but when he actually described the meeting, it was
right
a couple of pages. But to be able to take the information that he got from 40 people, which is that's a shit ton of, that's a lot of material.
It was interesting for him to even acknowledge what you were saying, Chad, which is like, yes, this is the middle of the book, but this is one of the most important parts of the book.
Yeah. I just thought it was fascinating. His answer was really, really, really good. And it, like you said, was he using a microphone? Was he not using a microphone? When you read
was it cold?
Well, yeah. I mean, I like to read something and fully immerse myself into the situation and know just by words on a page what the scene looked like.
It felt to me, and this sort of gets back to the those emotions while reading this book, specifically as an advocate of small beer. It felt like you were there, and you could almost feel upset with the other people. And that's just honestly, that's a tip of a cap to the author, to Josh.
Anything that elicits emotion within yourself, it's a definite tip to the cap to the author, because you're right. It sets the scene. You can also in your mind imagine standing there, crying like everybody else, or being upset like everybody else, angry,
crying, going off with the people that you were most close with that also worked there and commiserating together,
going upstairs to get high.
Sure, that could have been me.
I mean, it was very well done.
I think what's really struck me too, as something that you wouldn't know without interviewing the person, is I really liked when he described how. So I wrote this book, and he even made comments like, "Yeah, tear up that page or write this page."
Yeah.
But I wrote this book, and I had a beginning and I had a middle, but I didn't have an end.
Yeah.
And he doesn't know when the end's coming, but then it came.
He kind of had an introspective moment because we had asked him about that, and he's like, at first he said it probably shouldn't have taken so long, and then the next thought out of his mind was, well, it had to take that long because he didn't know how it would end.
And that's why I respect him, and I appreciate it because he didn't force this to be done. It was so thoughtful. It was he waited for the ending to come, and the ending came.
Yeah. Yeah.
So
I thoroughly enjoyed it. If you guys have not picked up his book, I don't know what's wrong with you. You can get it on Amazon, Kindle. You can also get it on Audible if you're more into the listening thing, because Chad doesn't like to read. Or
oh no,
it's not that he's still learning to read,
right? And you have to give him a hard deadline in order to get him to read. Heard. But as Josh says in the interview, please try to pick it up at a local small bookstore and support small businesses. So, anything else on the book, on the interview?
It was fun.
It was fun. It was a lot of fun. I loved every minute of it, and I think we'll be doing that more often on this show because that was so much fun.
And you know what? Go ahead, Chad.
I feel like this show just kind of took a step of maturation.
Ooh.
Well, maybe the show I didn't.
I said the show.
You did say the show.
He did specify the show. Yeah. I think it just reminded me too that as we sort of discussed earlier, whether it's at a brewery or at a craft beer store, there's such a great community out there, and there's just. I mean, I really believe that Josh was just having fun, just talking shop.
Yeah,
it felt. I mean, because I watched a couple of interviews and listened to a couple of interviews that he's done. I've read there are articles out there where he's talking about things. I felt like a lot of those. I mean, they were good, but they were very, very structured. Produced, not that the show isn't produced, but it felt like we were just kind of talking to a friend about a cool project that he had done, and I felt like he was very open with his answers. He did say at one point, "I've never not answered a question."
Yeah, right. Yeah,
and and I said I think I said that a couple of times. You don't have to answer this if you don't want to, or I said at one point, I'm not trying to call you out here, and he didn't even blink. He just like, "Oh no, I'll answer it."
Yeah.
And I don't know if other shows might even censor questions like, "Nah, don't ask him that."
Well, and for anybody that reads the book and has an opinion,
fuck your opinion.
I would definitely recommend listening to the interview, not for us, but for his answers, because we asked real questions. These weren't like sort of.
These are questions that we wanted to know the answer to.
Yeah.
Because I remember when you read the book. You're like,
I was pissed.
But what about this? But what about this? And what about this?
Yeah.
So it wasn't propaganda in any way. Like you just said, there were questions that we wanted to ask. We didn't. There was no collusion, to use a common.
Oh boy, here we go.
Common word these days.
What?
With Josh and setting this interview up. We didn't have
Russia's
any of the
next.
questions.
We're in trouble. Look out.
We didn't have any of the questions vetted by him.
No. And I think
no, he had no
idea what he was walking into. He probably would have said no if he did. No. Yeah. He was great. Especially the night before he's leaving on vacation.
Yeah, on a family vacation.
I would have said no. I can't do it then. I'll get you the week later or something.
Yeah.
If Chad is correct in that we have ascended to a new level of quality. What I would say is Josh set a high bar. So, thanks, Josh.
Yeah. Thank you very much for
Very
coming on the
good.
show.
Good, great stuff.
We appreciate it. So I'm done with the beer. I mean, I've actually been done with the beer.
Yeah, I'm just about to the 19th hole.
What does that mean?
I went on a nerdgasm.
All right, so
Can we get something from Spaceballs where he's like, "I'm surrounded by assholes"? You know what I'm talking about?
That's a good one, man.
I need that.
Remind me about that tomorrow.
Okay,
I'll get that. That sounds good. All right, Chad, for your final pick.
One beer.
On this.
No. I'm not done. Go to
2 beers.
Jake.
325.
325. All right.
And I will add to that. I look forward to going there again.
Yeah, I do look forward to going there again. We should put that on the calendar somewhere too. Chad is eagerly trying to chug this. I'll go ahead.
3 beers.
Yeah, I think Scarlet Fire is really good. It's a good red ale. It's a solid Irish red ale for sure. It's everything you'd expect out of it. I mean, if you like red ales, you're gonna like this. I'm gonna stay at the 375. It's good. I'd buy more of them. Absolutely. You know, very, very, very good beer.
1 beer.
Oh, Chad,
and we come back around. And I wasn't chugging it just to finish it. Because I was talking quite a bit, so I didn't put as much beer in my mouth while I was talking.
All I'm hearing is
We know.
excuses.
I'm gonna make a significant jump here.
Oh.
And I say that because
What kind of new devilry is this?
Perfect.
I don't drink a lot of red ales. So I always try to compare the style, right? And I know that I don't rate red ales highly very often. But I'm going to go to I think this is really good after.
All right, so hang on. We started at 3.5.
Yeah. And then I stayed at a 3.5.
You stayed at 3.5. And now?
And now I think this is an exceptional beer.
Drum roll.
And then we should
and then you know where my exceptional category starts is at a 4. So I'm going to jump to a 4. I think this is a really good red ale.
I went on a nerdgasm.
4.
4.
It's a pretty significant jump.
It's pretty significant.
But it's compared to other red ales, not just other beers in general. So other red ales, this is one of the best ones I've had.
I agree with that general statement, but what I would say is that Untapped does not give us the ability to compare to just beer style. So
I don't care if you like it or not.
It's all in my head, buddy.
As in everything. It's all in his head.
If I told you everything that was going on in this head.
Oh my gosh.
I won't talk nice to you and talk about fornicating with you.
Yeah.
Every day, everybody.
And
I'm many things, I'm many things. Yeah, I'm a convicted rapist. I'm a hellraiser. I'm a father, a loving father. I'm a semi-good husband.
I'm a semi-good husband. Oh, that's fucking never gets old. Oh man, that was another episode of the book. Thank you again to Josh for joining us. We really appreciate it. Had an awesome time doing that. Thanks for Tighthead for the good beer. And Jake, thanks for walking across the street.
Thank you guys. I mean, maybe I'm just starting a circle jerk here.
Oh boy, here we go.
But I think I think there's some future here in this interviewing.
I just gotta do number 2.
Well, yeah, but there you can both be true.
That's coming up after we're done here.
We're going to get a Marco Polo here in about 5 minutes.
Freedom.
That escalated quickly.
All right. Thank you so much, BeardHopsDad.com is where you can find all the links and shit and stuff. Are we done?
Let's go.
Gonna hit the button. We done, Chad?
Oh, yep.
We're the 3 best friends that anyone could have. We're the 3 best friends that anyone can have. And we're always gonna hang out.